chapter number 5. So this is continuing the flow of food. And so with the flow of food, we actually have several chapters involved with that because there's so much involved in what comes through from our farms to our distributors, to the kitchen, and then out into our dining room. So on this particular one, we're going to be looking at purchasing, receiving, and storage. But first, we're going to listen in on another Dirty Restaurant episode to see how not to do it so we can learn from some real-world situations.
Anna, have you ever heard Dirty Restaurant Tuesday? You have before, yes. You know how we do this.
You actually threw me into it the very first day of training.
That's right, we did. I said, come on, we're going to record some Dirty Restaurants here. Well, so we've got a couple here that did not do so well when the health inspector showed up. One is called A Piece of Havana. I don't even like the name of that restaurant. It's on South Tryon Street, a 92.5. And it said, the inspector said, you need to provide proof that the raw fish you're serving does not have parasites. Normally, restaurants that serve fish raw get a certification from the supplier. Well, they didn't have that. So, would you like some parasites with that on the side, sir? They have raw chicken stored over pork and beef. No. And they had soup that was cooling from the day before, still at the wrong temperature. Some folks say that's well seasoned. Yeah. Well, the inspector said you might want to go and throw that out. So that's A Piece of Havana on South Tryon, a 92.5. I think that up.
Yeah. I don't want a piece of that.
Now, this one, we had these guys on a couple of weeks ago, Ty's Wings, T-Y, Ty's Wings on North Sharon Avenue. Back on the 6th of December, I believe, they had an 89. So they tried to clean things up and they called the inspector back. They got another 89.
So no improvement.
Still, no one in management with any food safety training. That was a repeat violation. They had rice and collards and chicken wings all at the wrong temperature, and they had been made 3 days earlier. Can you imagine that?
No, then you're paid money for that. Yeah, I can do that at home.
Oh, are you much of a cook there, Anna?
I am, yes.
Are you really?
I cook quite a bit. I rarely eat out.
Oh, okay. So you know not to leave rice collards and chicken wings aren't cooling for 3 days.
No, not at all.
Then it turns out they just had a lack of proper cooling equipment altogether. Yeah, there you go. So that's Ty's Wings, not once but twice, scoring at 89. And last but not least here, this is called Tienda Antojito. I think I said that right. They're on South Boulevard. They had an 87.5. Nobody there with any knowledge of how to handle food safely, Inspector writes. No one? No one. Nada. There was no hand soap at any of the kitchen sinks. Observed an employee, several of them, go in and out of the kitchen and they never washed. Well, what's the point if you don't have any soap?
I think I'll just get my hands wet.
Yeah. Kitchen workers also did not have hair restraints. Cabbage, cheese, rice, and other items had no dates on it, and it says workers quickly began putting dates on stuff.
So they knew what they were supposed to do.
That's right. They just didn't do it. Oh, man. So there you go. That's Tienda Antojito on South Boulevard at 87.5. That's some sassy salsa there, man.
So listening to that report of those 3 different restaurants, we have a massive number of problems, including one restaurant that was re-inspected after really failing in what they should be doing and equally failing all over again. When you're inviting the health inspector to come back in, you would think, I'm sure that the health inspector walking in, he or she thought to themselves that, I'm going to see some improvement here. That's what the expectation would be. Otherwise, why call me? And to have those same issues coming up, it's catastrophic. And it's really bad for their business. It's bad for their customers. It's bad for their staff. And right now, businesses can't afford to be losing customers unnecessarily. But anyway, so looking through all those types of things. So firstly, we have parasites or the possibility of parasites in some foods. So do you guys remember how do we in this country try to eliminate ever having parasites in our food? There's one big way that we can do it. Right. As long as we have that reliable, safe source where our food is coming from, then we're almost, not completely, but we're almost guaranteed that we're not going to have parasites in. The likelihood is minimal that we'll have any parasites coming into our food supply. But so if they can't guarantee it, that probably means that they're buying it through the back door from someone that they don't really know. And that's not something you want to risk your business or the health of your customers for. Incorrect refrigerator storage. So we're going to be talking more about that as we look into receiving and storing today. So the refrigerator, as we talked about, we have ready-to-eat foods up at the top, and then we work our way all the way down to the more significantly dangerous foods to our health that tend to have more bacterial or microbial issues with them. They tend to be farther down towards the bottom. So we'll talk more about those as well. Hand washing. So if you can't use any soap to hand wash, then you're not really washing your hands. You're just making your hands wet. Right? These are just things that set off those health inspectors because they know if there's one problem like that, there's multiple problems coming along. Dates on foods. And so how many days do I have if I open, say, a bag of cheese? How many days do I have to use that cheese up or dispose of it? 7 days, right. So I must, and that's 7 days including the day it's open. So if it's Monday when I'm opening it, then that means, and say if it's at 8:30 at night, towards the end of Monday, it doesn't matter. Today is still day one. So I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. By the end of Sunday, it either has to be used up or disposed of. Right? And so these people weren't dating things. So that probably means that they were either not tracking it or they were allowing foods to go longer than they should. Again, you're just opening the possibility up to food poisoning issues coming up. Hair restraints. They should all be wearing hair restraints of some sort. Evidently they were not. No manager trained on site. Again, this is one of the reasons why you guys have this opportunity to take this exam, is because the whole nation over, there are not enough people with the with the manager's ServSafe level certification that these businesses need. Time and temperature abuse. They're talking about some things being out for 3 days and not being maintained at the correct temperature. That's catastrophic. I mean, you are literally just waiting for someone to get sick by doing that. I wouldn't do that for my cat, right? I mean, it's such a dangerous thing to do. And then when you have refrigerators not even working properly, the probability of issues coming up is greatly increased, because then you're never keeping food safe. But then on top of that, in terms of business-wise, business sense, for the sake of spending a few $100s or maybe just a couple of $100s to get that refrigerator fixed, the fact is you may have thousands of dollars worth of food that goes bad quicker than it should because you're not refrigerating it, right? And so just the quality of food as well is going to be diminished as well. And none of it makes sense. Okay, let's jump in with purchasing, receiving, and storage. So we purchase food from approved, reputable suppliers, right? We heard about the problems on some of these other businesses where they're not doing that, but we should always be purchasing from approved, reputable suppliers. So they inspect all of their food lines all the way back to the farmers, to the fisheries, and all the way back, making sure all the supply lines are safe. They have to meet all applicable local, state, and federal laws. So we should get to know our suppliers so that we can have these food safety practices. So we should always consider reviewing recent inspection reports that may have happened. Look at reports from the USDA, the FDA, and other third-party inspections as well. We should know exactly where our food is coming from so that we can trust where it's coming from. We should arrange for deliveries so that they can arrive when staff has enough time to inspect it. I would always make sure that my food is not going to arrive during breakfast, lunch, or dinner service. If it does, I would need to have a separate individual on staff who can actually receive it and put it away immediately. If it arrives right in the middle of a busy service, and you don't have the ability to check it, then they may be undercutting what they should be giving you, knowing that they're already gone by the time you get to check everything in. But plus, on top of that, from a food safety standpoint, what if some of that product doesn't come in to the standard you're looking for? And then what if some of that product sits out longer than it should, which could be detrimental to everyone's health? Give the staff the tools that they need. So they must have accurate thermometers, the correct kind of thermometers that you can actually get accurate readings on the food as it comes in. Make sure you have things like scales so you can make sure the volume of that food that comes in is correct as well. Make sure that the staff are trained so that they know what to look for. If they see some meat that's kind of slimy, they smell it and it has like a nasty kind of a smell to it, maybe an acidic smell to it, then they know not to accept it in. But if they don't know, if they're just told when the food comes in, sign for it and put it away, then that's exactly what they'll do, right? So we have to make sure that we teach them everything they need to know. Inspect the deliveries immediately when they're received. You shouldn't be accepting anything which is substandard, especially from a health standpoint. Send it back. Make sure that the bill is changed to reflect that. So when the deliveries arrive, visually inspect the delivery vehicle. Make sure that the actual vehicle itself is fit for bringing food in. Check for signs of contamination that could occur. Inspect the overall condition of the vehicle and look for signs of pests. One big thing that can come in, especially in summer months, on fruit are fruit flies. And once you get a fruit fly infestation in your kitchen, it is really hard to get rid of them because they need such a small amount of food supply and water supply to maintain literally hundreds of them, and they multiply literally every couple of days. You get fresh batches of them coming out. They're very difficult to get rid of once they get in. And all over your kitchen, you have food for them, even if you have a clean kitchen. So don't let them in the first place by making sure that if you see them all over the strawberries or whatever's coming in today, make sure that you don't accept those coming into your establishment in the first place. So visually inspect food items, check temperatures, store the items as quickly as possible so that they are not left out in the temperature danger zone. Supplier is given after hours access when we do key drop deliveries. So this is when you may have a very busy establishment and the drop-offs can't be done during the day. There are some areas where there are restrictions on certain times of deliveries. So for convenience, you can do this. Now you have to be extremely specific with the supplier that's doing this kind of thing. You have to make sure that they understand your rules as to exactly how this will work. So you have to make sure that the deliveries meet this criteria. So they have to be inspected upon arrival at the operation. They have to be from an approved source. They have to be have been placed in correct storage locations to maintain the required temperatures. So if a distributor brings in some flour and some fish, some meat, and some tomatoes, different things will need to be possibly frozen, refrigerated, or placed into our dry storage off the floor, right? You have to be able to trust that these suppliers will do exactly that. Make sure that they're protected from any contamination in storage, and make sure they're not contaminated when they first come in, and that they're honestly presented, right? So when you ask for and you paid for 15 pounds of sirloin of beef, then that's exactly what you got. So you have to have a very trustworthy supplier to be able to do this type of delivery system. Okay, what do you think? You receive cases of canned goods with dirty surfaces. Can you accept them?
Is like dust or something?
Yeah.
I think that was can.
So yeah, we can accept that because they can be cleaned. Now, if that said something along the lines of that they're dented, it's rusty, they're warped or anything like that, now we've got a problem. But if it's just the canned goods are just dirty, it's just dusty or something like that, as long as you can still read the label, you can make out exactly what everything is on it, then a can be cleaned, but as long as it's not damaged in any way. Okay, so looking at recalls and inspecting. So When we have a recall, we have to identify the recalled food items. So anytime you hear about recalls, for yourself at home as well, always double check, because you may have something you purchased maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. It's just been in the back of the shelf somewhere that has been recalled. Make sure that you take a quick look at that, just to make sure you're not going to eat something that could be harmful to you. Remove the item from our inventory and place it in a secure and appropriate location. Store the item separately from food, utensils, equipment, linens, and single-use items. Label the item in a way that it will prevent it from being placed back into inventory and being used. Inform the staff not to use the product. Stick a big sticker on it, like on the picture here, a nice big red sticker on there. Do not use this product, but also do not throw this product away, right? Because if it's to be returned, we want to be able to get credit for it, so it doesn't adversely affect financially the business, but you don't want to let any employees use that product at all. Revert to the vendor's notification or the recall notice to determine what we do with them after that. Okay, would you accept or reject the following things? So this fish with an internal temperature of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Accept or reject? You say reject, you say reject. So this is fish, looks like some red snapper, internal temperature of 50 degrees. Okay.
You gotta put it out.
Right, we are rejecting that. It's too warm, right? Yes. Okay, so we've got these live clams, internal temperature of 50 degrees. Do we accept or reject? You say we're good? What do you guys say? So yes, we can accept live clams. Okay, as long as they're still alive in there, then yes, we can accept those at 50 degrees. We will, however, then cool them back down as quickly as possible. So the air temperature can be 45 degrees. They should be no greater than 50 degrees. Then cool them to 41 within 4 hours. But basically, as soon as they come in, put them in the refrigerator. Get them chilled down as soon as possible. Okay, so we have scallops. These have been already taken out of the shell, so they're not alive, right? Shellfish that are removed from their shells are not alive. So with these scallops, they are currently at 50 degrees. Can I accept those or reject them? You're saying reject? What do you guys think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? So yes, so we are going to reject those. So for when you have scallops or any other shellfish which has been already shelled, so it's dead, it must be kept down outside of the temperature danger zone. Okay. Would you accept or reject this? We've got milk that's 45 degrees coming in the door. You're saying no, you're saying yes? Thumbs up or thumbs down? All right, we can accept that. It's okay to accept it. This is given as an acceptable limit, right? 41 degrees is where our temperature danger zone starts. For a delivery, it is acceptable to allow it to go up to 45. However, we do need to then chill it right back down to 41 or below within those 4 hours again. So as soon as it comes in, get it in the fridge. The big thing with milk is, because milk generally has a fairly long shelf life from where it's heat treated, from where it's been pasteurized. The thing is that every minute that it's above and in the temperature danger zone, it's going to sour quicker. So the quality of our milk will be diminished much quicker as well if we don't get it in the fridge. So as soon as it comes in, check it. As long as it's at 45 or below, then we're okay. Get it in the fridge so it's good and cold. That way it'll keep longer as well. Okay, eggs still in their shells, 45 degrees. Good or bad? What do you guys do? What do you guys think? You think you're good? So yes, so we can accept those at 45 degrees, but again, Same deal. We've got to get them down outside of the temperature zone, danger zone as quickly as we can. Okay, would I accept or reject this chicken breast? It's at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So a nice warm chicken breast. Accept or reject? You're saying reject? You're saying reject?
Yeah.
So, yes, we have to reject that one because it should be at least what temperature? What's the top of the temperature danger zone? 135. Right, so we should be, so say if it's in a chafing dish, it should be at least 135. But if it's just been cooked, what temperature do we need to cook it to? 165, right. So if it's just been cooked, it should hit 165. If it's being hot held in a chafing dish or under a heat lamp or something like that, it should be a minimum of over 135 when it's being hot held. If it's 120, then it's bathing in a nice warm sea of possibly salmonella, just loving the day, right? Okay, accept or reject this frozen shrimp. So with this, yes, and actually it's a little difficult to be able to see on this picture here, but they're kind of clumped together. So we're going to say reject. So anytime that you have any kind of seafood or products that are like this that should be individually separated out in that bag, so those shrimp should just kind of shake around individually in there because they are IQF, they're individually quick frozen, right? And so by doing that, they separate out from one another. They don't stick to each other when they're frozen. Even if they're frozen for a whole year, they may start to get some freezer burn to them, but they won't stick to each other. When they stick to each other, that's indicating they have been warmed up. They may not have completely defrosted, but they defrosted enough that they were above 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which is completely frozen solid, and they stuck to each other and they refroze. When that happens, that's an indicator that there could be some time and temperature abuse going on, and we don't know to what extent. It's not worth taking the risk. If you get a bag of shrimp and there's just one big block that you don't rattle around and separate out, don't ever risk it. Don't accept them. Would you accept or reject this box of SingleUse Cups? The box looks a little worse for wear. Right, so we're going to reject that because when you look at that box, you don't know the condition of what might be inside there, things that may have gone in there. You don't know if that box got wet, so those single-use cups, they may be dirty on the inside. They may be completely waterlogged on the inside. Who knows? Don't accept them. All right, so I've got this bag of flour right here. There appears to be some small little nibble holes in the bottom. Accept or reject? No one likes food that's been nibbled on by a rat? No. Right, so we reject anything that looks as though there could be some kinds of pests that could have been involved. The pests could be right inside there, ready to come into your business too, right? We don't want any of that. Okay, so accept or reject this can of food. So the can looks like it's a little bloated on the top. It's all dinged and dented over on the side. Surely that food must be okay, right? No. Right, there are a few problems with this. So by being dented, it could even be pierced, which would allow microbial issues to get into that can. Before then, the inside of that can went through what we call a botulinum cook, which means it's commercially sterile on the inside. That's why you can keep canned food for years at times. But with this, we don't know if that seal has been broken. So that can cause problems with bacteria getting in and growing in there. A second issue is that these cans are made of varying different types of metals. They then spray the inside with a very fine plastic liner so that it protects the food that's inside there from the metal. Because you can't necessarily store things in tin or aluminum or there are different metal products like that or steel if it's just sitting right up against it, because that metal could leach into that food. And so it can go rusty on the inside too. Things like tomatoes that are very acidic, if they're in a can and that can's dented, the chances are the acid from those tomatoes starts eating away at the metal because that plastic lining can be damaged on the inside. So then you can also get metallic food poisoning too. So it can create all sorts of problems. Dented cans, don't ever accept them. Okay, would you accept or reject this meat? Looks like there's some things kind of draining out of there. It doesn't look like that seal is working out very well. Right, so we're going to reject that. All foods packaged with a reduced oxygen environment, so vacuum packed foods, must be rejected if the packaging is bloated or leaking. Right, that means that there's either some microbial problems going on in there, or there probably will be soon if it's leaking, because that's allowing things to come in and out. Would you accept or reject this case of dry pasta? Anyone see any problems with the box? No? Everything looks good. It's a good clean box. It's sealed. It's labeled correctly. I think we're good to go on that one. Okay, would you accept or reject this bag of flour? Looks like it's a little damp at the bottom. Maybe it's been sitting in a storeroom that got a little waterlogged. What could possibly go wrong, right? Yep. We're going to reject that one. We don't want to have anything that looks like it may have been contaminated. Would you accept or reject this Danish? Either those are extra raisins on the side, or they are raisins left by the rats. Not good, tasty raisins, right? Yeah, we're rejecting those. They are not going to taste good, and it's not going to be good for us or our customers. All right, any signs of pest or pest damage, reject. Okay, so what do you think? This date on the package is the last date recommended for use of the product while it's at peak quality. So does that mean the use by date or expiration date, the sell by date, the best by date, or the coded date? So which is the last date recommended for use of the product while at peak quality? I was looking at A, or maybe C. So it is actually A. So the use by or expiration date. So when they say sell by date, then that's an indication to the store they need to get it out as a rotation thing. It may not be, generally when you have a sell by date, it will possibly have another day or two that it'll be okay after that. When you look at a best by date, again, listen to the way it's kind of worded. It's best by this date. Well, so it's not terrible by the next day, right? It's an indicator again of stock rotation. And coded dates, there are lots of coded dates on different products which aren't necessarily to do with the best quality of that food. In fact, if you look at eggs, there are actually dates on eggs. There is a use by date on eggs, and yes, we go by that. But there's also a date that indicates when that egg was actually processed. So you can actually tell exactly how old that egg is on the box itself. But that's not to do with how long the shelf life is. That's to do with when it popped out from the chicken. Okay. But the use by or expiration dates, those are the dates that we go by, that are the ones that we have to pay attention to as to the quality and the safety of our food. This date is the day at which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality. So this is when we're going by the best by date. Okay? So that's when we're looking at the quality and flavor of the product. All right, this date tells the store how long to display the food for sale. So that was our B, our sell by date. Okay, so handling shelf stock tags. So when you buy shellfish for your restaurant, you get a shelf stock tag. That tag has several pieces of information on it. We have to make sure that we hold on to those. They're not to be discarded. So we store the shellfish in the original container. We do not remove the tag from the container until the very last shellfish is used from that container. So when you get towards the end of that container, as much as you might want to put those last couple into the next box, just for convenience sake, so you can get rid of this box, you can't. You keep it in the same container till they're all gone. You don't throw out the shell. You don't throw out the tag for it either. You write the date that the last shellfish was used in that container, and then you make sure on the actual the shell stock tag, and then you keep that for 90 days. An executive chef would normally have a filing cabinet somewhere, and they literally would just have a rotating file where they just drop that one in the back. The ones at the front, if it's more than 90 days, throw them out. Okay, but it's really important you keep them for that length of time. What happens is that with some types of food poisoning you can get from shellfish, can take a long time to actually set in. And so by the time the health department comes through and starts to investigate and finally gets to you as being one of the possible sources, and they're not necessarily going to blame you for this. This shell stock tag is so they can trace it back to the person who pulled it out from the ocean and where in the ocean it was pulled out as to where an infection may be occurring. Right, so it may have nothing to do with you, the length of time you had them, the way you cooked them, or anything like that. It may be something more significant farther up the line. So never try and hide anything like this. This is something that should automatically be handed over to the health department as and when they investigate any of these kinds of issues, because it'll actually come through and hopefully vindicate you as being the person in the right, because you got it from an approved supplier, you maintain them correctly, you cook them correctly, but in the first place there was an issue with the supply. Okay. Fish to be eaten raw or partially cooked, we must make sure we document. Documents must indicate the fish was correctly frozen in the first place, and keep that document for 90 days from the sale of the fish. For farm-raised fish, we must make sure we have documents that state the fish was raised to FDA standards. There's lots of controversy about some farm fishing where it's detrimental to parts of the environment, but that's not what we're looking at here. Where we're looking at food safety, those fish are analyzed and maintained very carefully to make sure that they're not looking at infection rates going up within those fish. But so as long as you're buying them from approved reputable suppliers, then you should be fine. Keep these documents for up to 90 days as well, just in case if any issues occur. So would you accept or reject this? Block of cheese that's full of mold. Yeah, I think we'll be okay with accepting this one. It's blue cheese, so we're good. We purposefully use mold spores to inoculate this one. So if you look at it, the rind is nice and finished, and the mold is specifically running through those holes which have been made to actually inoculate that cheese. Not this one though, right? There's nothing controlled on this one. If you look back on this one here, it's very controlled. There are specific lines there are specific holes that have been inoculated here. When you look at this, it's just growing out of control because that cheese is past its best. Well, you're welcome to it, but I'm not going to enjoy it. Not a good one. Will you accept or reject these pork chops? They're nice and sticky to the touch. Sticky pork chops aren't good? No. Right? That's it.
Unless we get take out the pack, that's a natural stickiness to it, but overall.
It's right. It shouldn't be sticky. It should. I mean, there is some moisture to the meat, but it shouldn't be sticky. If it's sticky and tacky, that's indicating that there's some microbial growth going on in there. Yeah. Rejects any meat or fish or poultry that's slimy, sticky, or dry. Would you accept or reject this fresh tuna? It has a slight seaweed smell to it. Good or bad? So, when you have tuna, or quite a lot of different fish actually, when it has a slight seaweed type smell, and like an ocean salty kind of a smell, it's perfectly acceptable. It's great. Okay? It's when you start smelling any fishy kind of smells, when you start smelling any ammonia kind of smells, That's when we know it's gone way past its date. Okay, it's gone way past its best, and it can start turning dangerous as well. So this piece of tuna right here, you can literally eat raw if it's a sashimi grade tuna, but that's where it's been graded and checked meticulously. Okay, let's take a look at storage now. Does food being used on site need to be labeled? Yep, absolutely. We have to make sure that we know what it is, and we have to know when we made it too, because they start rolling into each other. So labels on food packaged on site for retail sale must include, and so this is, if we're going to be making packages of food to sell for people to take home and then to cook or to reheat or something like that. So this isn't necessarily if someone's coming into a restaurant to eat a plate of food, okay? So this will be more for to-go kinds of food or pre-packaged foods. It should have the common name of the food or a statement that clearly identifies it. Never try and hide what it might be, okay? It should have the quantity of the food. If the item contains 2 or more ingredients, a list of the ingredients and sub-ingredients in descending order by weight should be listed on there. Just the same as if you buy a bag of chips, on the back, it will tell you exactly what's in there, going from the largest quantity item down to the smallest quantity item by weight, okay? List of artificial colors, flavors, and the food should be included in there, as well as chemical preservatives. Right? We have to disclose everything, because people can have allergies to some of these things as well. The name and place of the business of the manufacturer, the packer, or the distributor. And then the source of each major food allergen contained in the food. So if it contains wheat, you've got to say contains wheat. If it has eggs in there, if it has nuts in there, either tree nuts or peanuts, soy, any of those items, we have to make sure the major 8 allergens, we have to make sure that we list any of those in bold letters. Make sure that people know so they don't make a mistake and hurt themselves. Date marking. So, ready to eat TCS foods, right? Time and temperature controlled for safety. TCS foods. So, our foods that we have to be really careful of to make sure that they're safe. They must be date marked if you're going to hold them for more than 24 hours. Yes. So, it's important that if we're going to keep them for more than 24 hours, they must be date marked. In my kitchen, personally, when I package something up, I date it and label it. Because guess what? I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to use it up today. If I don't, I might forget. I might get busy with something else. And then I end up forgetting. And then 3 days later, I look at that box. I'm like, did I make that yesterday or the day before or the day before that? I don't remember. And all of a sudden, you can find yourself in a position where you're either wasting food, which is bad, or poisoning people, which is really bad. Right? So we have to make sure, so legally, if you're going to hold it for more than 24 hours, make sure it's got a label. Best practice, label it when you wrap it. The label must include when the food must be sold, eaten, or thrown out. You can store it for only 7 days for all TCS foods. If it's held at 41 degrees or lower, after that date, food's got to go. And that's 7 days, including today, including the day that you open it, or you bag it, or package it, or something like that. What is the discard date of a potato salad prepared on October 1st? So potato salad, those are cooked potatoes, so they are TCS foods, right? So what would you say? 7th? Who agrees? Yeah? Yes, so the 7th is when it must be used. You have 7 days including the 1st. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Tuna salad was prepared on July 5th using tuna with a use-by date of July 8th. What is the discard date on that tuna salad? So I can't do 7 more days? That's correct, right. So July 8th is the date. So that would be the exception where you can't take it for 7 days after you open the package or whatever. if the date of expiration is a specific one like July 8th, and you only open it up on the 7th, well, the expiration is still the 8th. You can't stretch it by then turning that tuna into tuna salad or something like that. It doesn't extend the life, right? If that's the date of expiration, that's when it's got to go. Jambalaya was prepared on December 5th using shrimp with a use-by date of December 8th and sausage with a use-by date of December 10th. What is the discard date of that jambalaya? When did you say? 8th? Huh? But yeah, oh sorry, 10th. So you're saying the 10th? So the shrimp has a use-by date of the 8th, sausage has a use-by date of the 10th, and we prepared it on the 5th. So you're saying B? What else do we say? When do we have to use that up by? Yeah, we have to use it up by the 8th. Whatever the earliest date of expiration, even if I have other things that have an extended life on it, I have to use it by the earliest date of whatever's packaged in there. Because I can't make that shrimp have a longer shelf life just because I added it in with other foods that have a longer shelf life than it. Okay, is this food being stored correctly? So this is so we have some small curd cottage cheese at 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, we're outside of the temperature danger zone, completely safe. Is the food in this cooler being stored correctly? And it's currently reading. Let me see. Where am I? So it's at what temperature is that one? So the Fahrenheit on the outside is about 34 degrees.
Yeah.
Is that good? Yeah. Yeah, we're outside of the temperature danger zone, so we're good to go on that one. Is the food being stored correctly in this refrigerator? Got some nice containers in there. It's a bit packed, right? Right, exactly. Right, so that's the problem, is that crushing everything into a refrigerator is not a good thing. We want to have air circulation all the way through our refrigeration. Is this food being stored correctly? So at the front here, we got the 2019, and then 117, 2020, then at the back 214, 2020. So we've got the newer stuff at the front, the older stuff at the back. Are we doing the right job? Yeah, we are. So this is our FIFO system. First in, first out, right? So if the milk at the front here goes off in December 2019, and that was the first evaporated milk to come in, we're going to make sure that's the first one to be used up. Always make sure that someone doesn't go and put the newest stuff right at the front. Because guess where you always pull stuff, especially if you're in a hurry and you're not watching, right from the front, right? So if you put the newest stuff at the front and the older stuff at the back, that milk at the back is going to be going bad because you're not even going to realize, because you just keep on pulling the stuff right in front and you've got cheese growing in the back, right? Not good. Is this food being stored correctly? So I got some onions on the floor up against the wall. What could possibly go wrong? Right, so that's a problem because our food should all be stored off the floor. How far off the floor? 6 inches. Minimum of 6 inches off the floor. All of our shelving starts at 6 inches or more above the floor. We should also not be storing things up against walls, because that means that there's no air circulation going between them, and also we're not cleaning anything, right? If things are all completely blocked off, that's why all of our shelving is all on wheels. We can pull it away from the wall completely to be able to get behind it to clean, right? If you've got things stacked up right against the wall, you're never cleaning it. Okay, is this being stored correctly? We've got some salt in a sealed container. Yeah, we're looking good. We don't have to refrigerate salt, right? It's a dry ambient product. Just at room temperature, it's perfectly fine for years, right?
Yeah, it sucks in moisture also.
It does. That's why we keep it in a sealed container. Right, exactly. We definitely don't want it to get wet, because that's when we can ruin it.
Even if it's a bit humid, it's soaking.
Oh, it can soak up from the atmosphere. Yep. All right, so with cleaning, follow these guidelines. Clean dollies, carts, transporters, and trays often, right? Nice and regularly. Keep them clean. Store food in clean and sanitized containers. So this is how it comes down. Everything in our kitchen should be clean, right? It's important to maintain a clean environment to work in. But things should be clean everywhere. Things that come into contact with food should be clean and sanitized. Okay, so remember that. So food that's stored, you store food in clean and sanitized containers. We store dirty linens away from food in clean, non-absorbent containers or washable laundry bags. So you literally, if you have tablecloths that are going to be laundered, you can store them in a bag that you literally will throw into the washing machine at the same time, so it gets clean as well. Okay, is this food being stored correctly? We've got some ground beef right above the raw broccoli. Why not? What could possibly go wrong? Right, maybe end up dripping some blood or whatever else off that ground beef. We're going to make sure that we store things in the right order. So here we go. Make sure you remember this. This is very, very important, and there's almost always questions with regard to this setup. So, store food in the following top to bottom order. So at the top, ready to eat foods. Always ready to eat foods at the top, because we have gravity on Earth, and it will stop things from floating up to it. Everything goes down, right? Everything drips down. If you have the ready to eat foods that need to be protected at the top, nothing can drip on it. Seafood goes next down. Seafood is relatively low risk as long as you're buying it from an approved, reputable supplier. And so it also doesn't have to be cooked to such a high temperature either. We're going to be looking at temperatures in a few minutes, but you're going to see the lower the temperature we have to cook the food, the higher it goes in the fridge. The higher we have to cook food, the lower it goes in the fridge, because it's a higher risk. We don't want it to drip onto our food. So seafood comes next. Then whole cuts of beef and pork, steaks, things like that. They're all going to go on that next shelf down. After that, we have ground meats, ground fish. Now, you could take that steak from shelf C, grind it up, and now, even though it's the same piece of meat, it now has to go on the shelf below. Well, that's because when you take a steak, yes, it may have some bacteria on the outside of that steak, but then we sear that steak, and while we're searing it, even if we're searing it to a relatively low internal temperature, it's going to kill the bacteria that are on the outside of that meat. When we grind the meat, we take the bacteria that's on the outside of the meat, and we put it on the inside. So that now means I have to cook the inside of that ground beef to the same kind of high temperature that I had to cook the outside of that steak to. Okay, so that's why it becomes a higher risk when it's ground, whether it's fish, poultry, or meat. But then everything poultry related goes on the bottom, including ground poultry. Everything poultry related, so turkey, chicken, anything like that, always on the bottom. Don't ever let that drip on anything else, okay? Always make sure that everything that's in your refrigeration is going to be protected as well. Wrap it up properly. There should be no excuse. We have cling wrap, we have containers with their sealable lids, we have Ziploc bags. There's so many things in the world that we can use to safely wrap our products up. You know, it's not like we're living 300-400 years ago where we may be putting things into boxes or into wrapping it in straw and things like that. You know, we don't have to do anything like that. We have the marvel of plastics, metals, and sealable containers. Everything should be sealed in when it's in the refrigerator. Food should be stored in a clean, dry location away from dust and other contaminants. To prevent contamination, never store food in these areas. Locker rooms, dressing rooms, restrooms, garbage rooms, mechanical rooms, under unshielded sewer lines, or leaking water lines, or under stairwells. This seems nonsensical to have to say it, but in my experience, what happens is that as a business gets busier, then they run out of space. And that's when they start getting what they think is inventive, like, hey, we can just take this space over here. We never used to store anything under there. Why don't we use that? Because it's not made for food storage, right? Storing a bag of onions next to the toilet is not an acceptable thing, even if they're in a sealed container. I don't care. Because the chances are, you're going to go over, you're going to open up the lid, which is covered in, in splattered bits of whatever, and you're going to contaminate the onions that you put your hand into to get onions out. You just can't do it, okay? So anywhere you ever go, if you see things being stored in inappropriate places, then point it out, especially if you're the manager in charge of food safety, because it will come down to you when that health inspector walks in the door and asks, hey, why are those onions next to the toilet? Oh, well, that's where we always keep them. That's not an acceptable thing. Yes, not an acceptable thing, but it happens. Don't let it happen under your watch. So discard food that has become unsafe. Food missing a date mark. Because if you don't know, if you can't prove exactly when you purchased it, you don't know if it's safe or not. Food exceeding the date mark. Gotta go. Food exceeding time and temperature requirements. That's when it comes down to you and your staff measuring these things. If the food will be returned, make sure that you store it away from other foods and equipment. Label the food so food handlers don't try and use that product. Okay? Make sure you put a big label on it. Make it really obvious and obnoxious that that food is not safe to use.